So every single week, it feels like there are new AI features, automations, and transformations cropping up all of the time. But many of the conversations that I've been having week on week is how to even decide on where to start. We have the pleasure of speaking to hundreds of different product teams who are trying to simultaneously transform their entire product process and their products themselves. And as I say, it's a really big question of how do we decide and where do we start? And there's so much pressure. Your CEO wants things to change. Your team wants things to change. Your customers want things to change. The board wants things to change. Marketing needs things to change. So organizations right now are under so much pressure to change. And the problem is that most advice is either incredibly abstract or is just pure hype. So today I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to talk through a fantastic piece that was written by one of my favorite Substacks called the Department of Product. And inside it, it proposed a really interesting framework for helping people decide on what classifies as a good automation opportunity for either their users inside their product or for their team. And as I discuss this article, I'll be sharing as many insights as possible based on what we're seeing and hearing day in and day out. This is In the Loop with Jack Horton. I hope you enjoy the show. So yeah, this week's going to be a little bit different because I've been really hoping to do an episode like this for some time. I have to say, the amount of conversations we have every single week is quite staggering, and it's not an easy thing to decide on how or where do we automate first. And that can be, as I said, for a user or for your team. We're in the very fortunate position to have a broadly AI-first product development process, all the way from product all through to engineering and product marketing, which has been a heck of a lot of work to get in place. And our entire product is about enabling technology companies to have a conversational interface into their customers and their users. So we're quite in a really unique position to kind of sit at the intersection of how to both understand this opportunity and actually do something about it. And so I guess this piece by the Department of Product I found perfectly timed and really interesting. And it opens up to a reference to Benedict Evans, which is, he's a tech analyst, and his latest presentation that he gave. This tech investor, Benedict Evans, essentially said that right now, automation is AI's biggest superpower. And he suggests that whilst it's not as exciting as AGI, that automation alone is a big, big deal. It's the boring cousin of AGI, so artificial general intelligence. And he makes a good point, which is barcodes and databases were not sexy, but they completely transform retail. And so I'd argue we're seeing almost the exact same thing happening with AI and AI features in products right now. The wins aren't necessarily coming through big model breakthroughs every 6 months. They're coming from the application layer, so the top end, so well above the model, the technology people are interacting with, that takes away frustrating and tedious tasks from people's day-to-day lives. But with that comes a really key tension. And as the Department of Product said in the article, just because you can automate something doesn't mean you should, because the outputs from these automation efforts is often far from perfect in many, many cases. That judgment call on what to automate maybe for your users or for your team is what this article discusses and what this episode will cover in depth today. And I see this as a major problem to solve. We're actually building an agent in 2026 that helps people with this, because a lot of the time these are really new ways of looking at technology and process. Because somehow people have to also understand how AI and agents work, what they're really good at, what they're not good at, and then understand how to rip apart an entire process or product to improve it with those strengths and weaknesses in mind. So the article starts with something called the Verifiability Principle. So before we get into the framework itself, the article actually started by sharing a really interesting insight from an OpenAI co-founder. His name is Ilya Sutskever. So very famous online, got a massive YouTube account, very big on X. And he said in his view, a good candidate for AI automation is a task that is easily verifiable. You know, the more a task or a job is verifiable, the more amenable it will be to automation. So it's a very simple principle, but it's very powerful when you think about it, because the core question is, can you tell if it's worked? Now, there are many tasks for an individual that they can themselves take that judgment call or make that judgment call. But for some big enterprise organizations, they're going to be very obsessed with that verifiable or verifiability principle. So if you think about it from a user's perspective, if AI, say, auto-categorizes all their expenses, they can verify that really quickly and instantly. They can literally say, was this right or wrong? But if AI writes, let's say, personalized recommendations, it's very hard to know if that was going to be right or wrong. They're in very subjective territory. So that part of verifiability is really important, because if the AI is not good at doing something that is easy to say that's right or wrong, then sometimes it will not be a good candidate for automation. Now, the nuance here is how good the process is around that AI. However, this does also create a tension, because most of the things that are hard to verify is also where you're going to get the greatest gains in many ways from automation. So something that we learn at Mindset is you have to really build process around these things, because ultimately judgment becomes the key success criteria of a human in a modern day process. So we need people that can make really good judgment calls on the quality of an output from an AI. And that really is going to give you a good indication of how much human in the loop is needed here. Because most of the time, an agent with a bunch of, let's call it tools, so things it can do in the world, and the ability to do good reasoning, can do most tasks to a pretty good standard. Now, if you want to fully automate it, so you just don't want to look at that again, you're happy to say, go, never speak to me, go and do that thing, then the verifiability principle becomes really important. Otherwise, you need that human in the loop part of that process involved. So it's a lot simpler a lot of the time for your team, because you are a member of that team and a member of that process. Now, this gets even harder when you're trying to think about what type of automation experience should I offer to my users or my customers? And so this article then goes a bit deeper into whether this should be a product feature or something just for an internal process automation. Now, to help decide whether you want to create a product for your users or your customers inside your existing product, what you should be thinking about is, first, what triggers this AI? Is it a user action? Is it an event that happens in the platform? So someone hovers over something, clicks on something is an event. Is it a certain signal? Second, what relevant data is going to be therefore collected, and what processing is the AI going to do? So is it going to be classifying it? Is it going to be generating something or writing or creating something? Is it going to be predicting something? And then fourth is some form of, when I say logic or instructions on how it decides what happens next. Should it auto execute that task? Should it come back and ask the user? And finally, therefore, what is the end action that happens? What is that end outcome that happens? We actually run sessions with companies that are coming through our sales process on essentially trying to create a job description for this AI idea. What are the inputs? So what are the user questions? What situations is it going to trigger in or appear, or suddenly step forward and say, I'm here to do something? Therefore, what magical skills does this AI thing need? So it needs access to user memory or data. It needs access to some other system in a third-party application. A good example here is taking predictive shopping carts. You could autofill a shopping cart when a user opens an application, and then suddenly items are already in there, ready to be checked out based on some sort of behavior or action they were doing elsewhere in the application. Or you could just simply show suggestions to them and let them approve each one by one. Or a middle ground, auto add high confidence items and then suggest medium to lower confidence items to the user to say, do you want this in your cart, yes or no? All of that could have happened based on something triggering in the application, the AI using data, processing and generating or suggesting things, and then either doing a full human in the loop or just doing it itself. And those design decisions is going to dictate whether the user feels helped or bulldozed. With that in mind, how do we understand whether this candidate or idea is a good opportunity to automate something for maybe my users or my team? Now, the framework suggested in the Department of Product article essentially rates opportunities across 3 dimensions and scores them from 1 to 3. You got safety, volume, and verifiability. So safety is about user impact when or if you are wrong. So if the AI suggests the wrong product substitution and the user catches it before checkout, then it's annoying, but it's fine. So therefore, it's got a simple safety score. if it auto-approves something and just takes an action by itself and costs people lots of time or money or potential risk to their health or safety, then therefore you've damaged trust and it's not the safest of ideas. So I'd score 3 for anything that's just a simple, easy to catch, low impact, low stake error, and score 1 for anything that is going to hurt a user before they can intervene. The second part of that framework is volume. So volume is about whether this matters enough to build. If users do this task constantly, every session, every day, and they take lots of time doing it, then it's a fantastic opportunity to automate this thing for your user or customer or team. If it's a once a month thing, maybe, it's not really worth the investment. So I would score 3 for something that's constant, daily actions, and then I'd score 1 for rare ones. And third and final is verifiability. So this is about feedback loops. Can users easily tell if the AI got it right? So maths, for example, is a simple yes or no. And if it's objective and simple to say yes or no, I'd score it a 3. However, personalized recommendations are subjective, therefore I might score it a little bit lower to a 1 or a 2. And the maximum score of these things might be 9. Maybe you just want to not add all the scores up and you just want to assess each one of them within their own dimension. I'm not always a massive fan of trying to add different ideas and scores up and somehow finding, the best score out of all of them, because some ideas you will think that's actually just such a great opportunity, even if it is not that safe or even if it's not that verifiable. But because of the volume, I'm just going to go for it anyway. So the output of this for you and your team is going to be a classification of something of automate it now, make it just an assistance, so AI assistance versus full automation, or just something that's labeled as not ready yet or unsure. For user-facing features, most will land in the middle, to be honest. It'll be an AI assistant zone. And this is where design really matters. AI assistant I would describe as AI doing the work, but the user having control before anything is finally committed. If it books my entire holiday, I'd rather it check in with me first. So the article gives examples of things that scored 6 out of 9. So things like AI meal planning based on my health objectives, or AI generated meal plans based on the things that are in my shopping cart. These require taste and a preference judgment, and the AI could probably do a good job of recommending it, but probably not just doing it all for me. And this leads on to thinking about, therefore, why will things fail? If we now know why they succeed, why will they fail? Well, if you create an AI automation process change or something for your customers and users, well, it's going to fail because of a lack of trust. So early mistakes are often very visible. So maybe users will just start ignoring the AI suggestions or the AI actions that it can do for them. And just, therefore, adoption will just flatline. Maybe there's going to be frustration with edge cases. So it might work great 80% of the time, but that 20% where it's wrong is infuriating. So users therefore feel like they have to double check everything all the time. Or it's just really creepy. It knows a little bit too much, or if it's too aggressive and users feel like it's in their face or they're being surveyed all the time. And these 3 things that it could go wrong with, I wouldn't see this as we shouldn't do this at all. These are just things that you have to design for and think through. Again, whether you're going to make this full automation, an AI-assisted thing, and make sure that the user's very careful and aware of the things that this AI can and can't do, or just labeling something as not ready yet. So yeah, to wrap up, this was a little bit different. We went through really practical tools. We'll also share the article in the notes to the Department of Product because it's a really great framework. But right now, I think the only thing that you can't do is doing nothing at all. Because right now the world is moving so quickly. And every single leader must be completely ripping apart their processes and thinking about every opportunity to automate inside their product for their users 24/7. This should be the only thing you're focusing on. So I'm recommending you have a read of that article and start to reflect on what you're going to automate in 2026. Anyway, that's it for me this week. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next week.